I was kneeling on the dock that morning, half covered in engine grease, tightening a bolt on my old fishing boat when I heard heels clacking toward me like gunshots on wood. I didn't even have to look up to know trouble was coming. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the marina, stopped right in front of my bow, planted her hands on her hips, and jabbed a finger at my boat. "This eyesore needs to be moved. Today, I'm not paying premium rates to look at that," she snapped, like she was issuing royal orders. I wiped my hands on a rag, trying not to laugh. She thought I was just some mechanic, some nobody cluttering up her view. She didn't recognize me, the man who actually owns every slip, every piling, every last plank under her expensive yacht. And when she threatened to report me to the marina owner and get my boat kicked out, well, I told her I'd make sure the owner heard her complaint loud and clear. She had no idea how right I was. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you've ever met a Karen like this, hit subscribe so you don't miss how this ends. If you've ever worked on a boat, you know it's the one place you can shut out the world. That morning had started peaceful, just me, a socket wrench, and the faint slap of waves against the hull. My marina sits on a quiet stretch of water just far enough from town to feel like its own universe. It isn't fancy, never pretended to be. 40 slips, a small office, a maintenance shed, and a weathered wooden dock that's held more secrets than I can count. It's simple, steady, and honest. Kinda like me. I inherited the place from my Uncle Ray, a stubborn old fisherman who taught me everything I know about boats and about people. "A marina is like a neighborhood," he used to say. "You don't need everyone to be perfect. You just need everyone to respect the water and each other." For 15 years, I've run it with that exact philosophy. Reasonable rules, fair prices, clean facilities. I never tried to turn this place into some upscale harbor full of designer yachts. I wanted it to stay grounded, a place for real boaters. And for the most part, it was, until Karen arrived. But before I get to her chaos, let me paint you a picture of what this marina is like on a normal day. Mornings are filled with a quiet parade of fishermen rolling coolers down the dock, nodding to each other the way seasoned boaters do. The older crowd likes to gather near the fueling station, swapping the same fish stories they've told for 20 years. Kids run up and down the walkway in the summer, pointing at crabs scuttling beneath the planks. My staff, good people, steady people, handle check-ins, repairs, fuel orders, and the occasional engine won't start. Please save me emergency. It's small town, peaceful, predictable, even. Which is exactly why slip 37, my slip, sits tucked away in the corner. When I first took over the marina, I chose that spot deliberately. Not because it was the nicest, it wasn't, but because it was out of the way. I didn't want to take prime real estate from paying customers, especially when the waiting list is so long people joke it's harder to get into than Harvard. My fishing boat isn't a luxury yacht, it's a working boat. Strong hull, reliable engine, nothing shiny or polished. The kind of vessel built for storms, not selfies. I spend more time on that boat than in my own house. It's where I tune out paperwork, marina politics, and the occasional customer meltdown. Out there, on the water with the motor humming, I'm just a man and his boat. No drama, no nonsense. But of course, peace never survives long when a Karen moves in. About 6 months before that infamous Saturday, she sailed her oversized yacht into slip 35 like Cleopatra arriving in Rome. The thing gleamed like someone polished it with diamond dust. White hull, gold trim, and a name written in cursive so pretentious I forgot it the moment I read it. And she strutted down the dock with the same energy as her boat, loud, shiny, and aggressively self-important. I noticed immediately how my staff stiffened when she reached the office for check-in. My dock manager, Pete, is the calmest man on earth. A former Coast Guard officer who's been through real storms, not emotional ones. Yet the moment Karen opened her mouth, he wore the same expression he uses when a hurricane warning hits. She complained the slip was too tight, though her yacht fit fine. She complained the dock boards looked aged, Karen, because they're wooden. She complained her neighbors were too ordinary for a marina like this, and that was just day one. Within a week, she'd submitted 4 formal complaints through email, demanded premium VIP accommodations, and suggested we establish exclusive quiet hours for luxury boat owners. Luxury boat owners meaning herself. At first, I tried to see it from her angle. Maybe she was just nervous about being new. Maybe she didn't understand how things worked here. But then the behavior escalated. She threw late-night parties with music loud enough to shake neighboring hulls. She left trash on the dock for my staff to pick up. She installed custom bumpers and accessories without permission, drilling holes into a shared dock like it was her private pier. And every time someone called her out, she would flash her sunglasses, laugh, and say something like, "Relax, I'm a premium customer, I'm sure the owner would want me happy." The irony was delicious, and it was only a matter of time before she served it to herself. Customers started complaining behind her back, not just light grumbling, but actual threats to leave. One guy, Mr. Donnelly, had docked with us for a decade. He rarely spoke, but after 2 months of Karen's antics, he approached me at the fuel station and muttered, "Son, I don't know who runs this place anymore, you or that blonde tyrant in 35. That stung. Not because he doubted my authority, but because he was right. I had let things slide. I had let one loud person drown out the sense of community I'd worked so hard to preserve. But I still didn't act. Not yet. I gave Pete the green light to enforce rules more firmly. I issued warnings. I reminded Karen politely that a marina is shared space. She responded with eye rolls, sarcastic smiles, and the same tired threat. "I'll take this up with the owner." It became her catchphrase, and honestly, I kind of enjoyed it. I don't dress like an owner. I don't walk around with a clipboard or a name badge. I wear old jeans, boots that have seen too many docks, and shirts stained with grease or seawater or both. I'm there to work, not to posture. So Karen assumed I was nobody, a mechanic, a deckhand, a fisherman who accidentally docked in the wrong neighborhood. Let her assume, because as Uncle Ray used to say, a person shows who they are long before they realize who they're talking to. Karen repeatedly showed us exactly who she was. The staff started warning each other when she was on the property. A few even stepped into the maintenance shed to avoid her. She treated them like servants, the marina like her kingdom, and everyone else like an inconvenience. There was one afternoon where she marched into the office complaining that a fisherman was filleting something unpleasant too close to her yacht. She demanded we ban fish cleaning on the premises. In a marina, Pete asked if she'd prefer we also ban water and sunlight while we're at it. She didn't find that funny. But all that, every complaint, every tantrum, every moment she strutted around acting like the HOA of the harbor that was still manageable. Annoying? Yes. Exhausting? Absolutely. But manageable. What pushed things to the edge was the way she started talking about other people's boats. She'd walk by, eye a vessel, and whisper loud enough for the owner to hear things like, "Some boats shouldn't be allowed in a marina like this, or it ruins the whole aesthetic." She pointed at peeling paint, rust, small engines, homemade modifications, things that gave character to a boat, things real boaters understand. She wanted a museum of shiny toys, not a working marina. And then, one perfect sunny morning, she made the biggest mistake of her entire reign of terror. She pointed at my boat, my old fishing boat, my pride and joy, the one place in the world I can think clearly and breathe deeply. The boat that's been with me through storms, through grief, through rebuilding the marina from scratch. She stood there on the dock, looking down her nose at it, and declared it an eyesore that needed to be removed from her sight. That was the exact moment she crossed the point of no return. Because you can insult me, you can trash talk my staff, you can even rile up the whole marina, but you do not insult a man's boat, especially not the boat owned by the guy who owns your entire marina and every inch of the dock you're standing on. And that was the moment, covered in grease, wrench still in my hand, I decided to stop playing nice. Karen had just declared war. War doesn't always start with shouting or violence. Sometimes it starts with a look, a single, sharp, condescending look that tells you exactly what a person thinks they're entitled to. That morning, when Karen stood on the dock with her overpriced sunglasses and that ridiculous posture of someone posing for a luxury magazine, she looked at my boat like it was a stain on her carpet. That tiny twist in her lips like she'd tasted something sour, that was the spark. But what she said next, that was the gasoline. "You need to move this thing," she repeated, waving her hand toward my boat like she was shooing away a stray cat. "It doesn't belong here. I talked to some of the other yacht owners, and they all agree boats like yours lower the standard of the marina." I leaned against the railing to stand up. My knees cracked the way they always do after crouching too long. I wiped my hands on my rag again, not because they were dirty, I just needed something to do with them, so I didn't laugh straight into her face. "My boat?" I asked, feigning confusion. "What's wrong with it?" Karen scoffed. "Do you really not see it? It looks cheap, old, worn down. It ruins the entire aesthetic. People pay a lot of money to dock here, and we shouldn't have to look at at that. She pointed at the hull, like she was pointing at a dead rodent. Now I've heard some dumb things in my life, but never something as creatively stupid as a grown woman trying to impose an HOA on the ocean. She kept going. If you don't move it, I'm filing a complaint with the Marina owner. And trust me, I've been a premium member for years. He'll side with me. I rubbed the back of my neck, pretending to think it over. In reality, my brain was already moving at full speed. That so? I asked. You talked to the owner? No, she said impatiently, but I will. And when I do, you'll be gone. Mark my words. Mark my words. She really said that. I nodded slowly, as if I had just been scolded by a very stern elementary school teacher. All right, I'll make sure the owner hears every word of your complaint. She smirked, proud of herself, then spun around and strutted back toward her yacht. I watched her go, shaking my head. She had no idea she had just threatened the one person who could make her entire boating life extremely unpleasant or extremely short-lived. When she disappeared from view, I climbed onto my boat and sat there for a long moment, staring at the water. Not angry, not offended, not even annoyed. Just done. Done pretending she wasn't a problem. Done asking my staff to tolerate her. Done letting her poison what used to be a peaceful little community on the water. She wanted to play Marina politics? Fine. I was the mayor, the city council, and the entire zoning committee. The moment I stepped back onto the dock, my plan was already forming. I headed toward the office, where Pete was organizing registration forms. The man looked up the second he saw my face. He knows me too well. Something happened. I dropped the rag on the counter. We've officially hit the point of no return. Pete sighed. Karen? Karen. He rubbed his temples. What now? I recounted the entire interaction from start to finish. His eyes widened, then closed tightly like he was trying to wish himself into another universe. She called your boat an eyesore? He said. Yep. And threatened to get you kicked out of your own marina? Correct. Pete leaned back in his chair and let out a bitter laugh. Good God, she really doesn't know who you are. Nope, I said. And I'm not planning to tell her. He looked at me warily. So what's the play? I smiled. Compliance. He blinked. Compliance? Malicious compliance, I clarified. The legal kind. Pete grinned slowly, understanding dawning across his face. Oh, this is going to be good. I motioned for him to follow me into the office archives. They were really just a row of filing cabinets and 2 binders so thick they could be used as weapons. I pulled out the folder labeled Slip 35 Karen and set it on the table. Pete opened it, and the two of us stared down at the growing pile of paper documenting her various contributions to the marina. Unapproved installations, noise violations, waste disposal issues, warnings about late-night parties, complaints from neighboring slip holders, photos of trash left behind on the dock. Even a video clip of her telling one of my staff members, I pay more than you make in a month. You don't get to tell me anything. It was all there. Over 6 months of entitlement, disorder, and rule-breaking compacted into a neat little record, the kind any HOA president would salivate over if they were looking for grounds to enforce a bylaw crackdown. Except the HOA president was me. I flipped through the pages slowly until I found the section of her lease agreement that spelled out every single rule in the marina. People sign these things all the time and almost never read them, Karen included, but I do read them, because I wrote half of them and helped revise the other half. And there it was, the golden rule. The marina owner reserves the right to reassign slip placements at any time for operational, safety, or maintenance purposes, with reasonable notice given to the tenant. Reasonable notice. Operational reasons. Slip reassignment. A beautiful trifecta. I turned the binder around so Pete could read the clause. His eyebrows went up. You're moving her, he said. To slip 12. Pete whistled under his breath. Slip 12 wasn't dangerous or broken, but it was, let's call it functional. It sat near the main footpath where families with coolers walked by all day. It was next to the equipment shed where my maintenance team stored pressure washers, drills, fuel tanks, and every loud tool known to mankind. And the water there was slightly rougher because the slip caught more wake from passing boats. It was objectively the worst slip for someone obsessed with luxury and aesthetic standards. And the rate, Pete asked? I nodded. Time to bring her up to the correct price. She's been grandfathered in at the old rate too long. Pete cracked a smile. Legal, fair, and well-deserved. I like it. I sat down and began drafting the letter. Every word had to be perfect, not emotional, not spiteful, just precise, like a polite knife. I stated that her concerns about boat placements had triggered a full review of slip assignments. I explained that as part of this review, I determined her yacht would be better suited for slip 12. I reminded her of her lease obligations and cited the clauses she had violated. Then I laid out her options: comply with Marina rules moving forward, or terminate her lease with 30 days' notice. And yes, I added the rate adjustment. Nothing outrageous, just the current standard market price. But it would sting. When the letter was finished, I printed it on official Marina letterhead, signed it as owner, sealed it in an envelope, and handed it to Pete. Drop it on her yacht this evening. He nodded, taking the envelope like it was a sacred artifact. Gladly. As he walked out of the office, I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. Not with satisfaction, at least not yet, but with certainty. You don't let a Karen run your Marina, you don't let her bully your staff, and you definitely don't let someone stand on your dock and insult your boat. If she wanted to talk to the owner, well, she was about to hear from him loud and clear. The Marina is always quiet after sundown. Once the fishermen pack up and the families head home, all that's left is the distant hum of the tide and the soft knocking of boats nudging against their lines. That night, the stillness felt different charged, expectant like the calm before a storm you know is coming straight for you. Karen's storm. I knew the moment she opened that envelope, fireworks would start. In fact, I half expected to hear yelling from slip 35 the second she read the words, slip reassignment. But nothing happened immediately. She must not have returned that evening. Typical. Her yacht wasn't for daily use, it was for showing off. A floating trophy she used the way some people use social media. All image, no substance. The next morning, though? Oh, she arrived with hurricane force. I had just finished loading a crate of oil filters into the maintenance shed when I heard the rapid clack, clack, clack of high heels approaching like a distressed woodpecker having a nervous breakdown. I didn't even need to turn around. Only one person in the entire marina thought heels were appropriate footwear for a dock. You! Karen's voice shot across the walkway, sharp enough to chip paint. I turned slowly, keeping my face neutral. Years of dealing with irate fishermen who thought their engines had mysteriously broken themselves trained me well. Karen stormed toward me, envelope crushed in her hand, her sunglasses pushed up onto her head so aggressively that her hair was rebelling at the temples. "What is this?" she demanded, shaking the envelope like it was radioactive. "Looks like a letter," I said calmly. "Did someone send you one?" Her jaw clenched. "Don't play games with me. You know exactly what this is." I folded my arms, keeping my tone mild. "If you're referring to the slip reassignment notice, then yes, I'm aware." "Slip reassignment?" she shrieked, her voice echoing off the calm water. "You can't just move a yacht. I paid for a premium slip. I have rights." A couple of early morning kayakers paddling by lifted their heads, intrigued. I didn't blame them. Marina drama is better than morning radio. "You signed a lease, Karen," I said, holding her gaze. "And that lease gives the marina owner the right to reassign slips if needed." Her cheeks flushed in blotchy patches of red. "Needed? Needed? How is this needed? Explain that to me." "Well," I said slowly, "according to your letter, you expressed dissatisfaction with the current arrangement, concerns about the placement of boats in your vicinity, and doubts about whether the slip assignments were optimal. So I reviewed them." Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again like a confused parrot. "That doesn't mean move me. I meant other people. That hideous old fishing boat over there." "My boat," I said pleasantly. She froze. And that moment, that was the first crack in her armor. Your boat?" she whispered. I nodded. "Yes. The eyesore you insisted should be moved." Color drained from her face. I didn't know. I thought you were a mechanic? A deckhand? Someone you could push around?" I supplied gently. The kayakers were definitely listening now. Karen swallowed hard. Her voice lowered, not calm, but cautious. "Look, maybe I overreacted yesterday. I wasn't having a great morning, and I may have said some things that weren't accurate reflections of how I feel." "That so?" I asked. "Yes," she said quickly. "Too quickly. and I would appreciate it if we could just forget the whole thing and put my slip situation back the way it was. I held her gaze, watching her squirm under the weight of her own arrogance. Karen, the reassignment stands. Her eyes widened. You can't be serious. I apologized. No, I said, shaking my head. You didn't apologize. You tried to backpedal because you realized who you were talking to. That isn't remorse, that's damage control. Her mouth opened again in outrage, but no words came out. I didn't give her the chance to find any. You have 72 hours to relocate your yacht to slip 12, I continued. After that, you'll be charged the daily penalty as stated in your lease. Her jaw dropped. Penalty? Penalty? You're penalizing me? You violated multiple Marina rules, I reminded her. Consider this extremely lenient. I'll sue, she blurted. I'll sue you for retaliation, discrimination, emotional distress. Karen, I said calmly, you can pursue any legal action you feel is appropriate. But your lease explicitly states the Marina owner can reassign slips. You agreed to that. The rate change is also legal, your discount was outdated. And as for the violations, I tapped the folder tucked under my arm. They're well documented. She stared at the folder like it was a lit stick of dynamite. This isn't fair, she whispered. Fair, I repeated softly. Fair is what my staff tried to give you for 6 months. Fair is what your neighbors deserved but didn't get. Fair is what you ignored every time you left trash on the dock or blasted music at midnight. Her eyes flickered. She wasn't used to people standing firm. You're the Marina owner, she said, almost in disbelief. I am. And you're doing this? To me? I let a slight smile curl at the corner of my mouth. No, Karen, you did this to you. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing hard, blinking rapidly as if trying to force tearser rage back down. A small crowd had started forming at a respectful distance. People with coffee cups paused on the walkway, pretending to admire the sunrise while very obviously listening. Karen realized she wouldn't get public sympathy here. Not among people she'd insulted, ignored, or disrupted for months. Without another word, she spun around and marched back toward her yacht, heels clacking like angry punctuation marks. I watched her go, feeling, not triumphant, not vindictive, just settled. Like a balance that had been tilted too long had finally, quietly, thudded back into place. But of course, this was Karen, and Karen was not someone who backed down quietly. By noon, she had cornered my dock manager, Pete, demanding clarification, exceptions, special permissions, and temporary adjustments. Pete texted me one word: help. When I arrived at the office, she was mid-rant, waving the reassignment notice like a white flag dipped in venom. I want another meeting with the owner, she insisted. You're having one, I said, stepping in. She stiffened. 2 want a formal meeting, in an office, sitting down. This is an office, I said, gesturing to the cramped space with the filing cabinets and the coffee machine that sounded like a dying goat. No, she said, flustered. A professional office, with a conference table. I leaned forward. Karen, you are quickly running out of time and options. The slip reassignment is not negotiable. You can't do this, she cried. I'm a paying customer. You're a tenant, I said. A tenant who has abused the rules, disrespected staff, harassed other boaters, and disrupted the Marina community. And now you're a tenant being moved to another slip. That's all. If you hate it so much, you're free to leave. She froze. Leave. The word hit her like cold water. She didn't want to leave. She wanted control. And here, finally, she had none. She stormed out again. But by the following day, she was back with 3 crew members helping her unmoor the yacht. She looked humiliated, furious, but determined, the walk of someone who'd lost the battle and knew it. She moved to slip 12, complaining loudly the entire time about the noise, the proximity to foot traffic, the unprofessional environment, the smell of fuel, the chattering families, even the gulls, especially the gulls. And by the end of her first week there, she had called the office 8 separate times to complain about things that were, quite literally, the natural experience of docking a boat. The second week was worse. By the second month, she gave notice she was leaving the Marina entirely. She handed the paperwork to Pete. This place has no standards, she hissed. Pete smiled politely. We're working on raising them. Karen didn't get the joke. I watched her yacht being hauled out one last time. The dock felt lighter as soon as it was gone. And for the first time in months, The marina was quiet again, peaceful, kind, exactly the way Uncle Ray intended it to be. There's a strange kind of quiet that settles over a marina once an entitled person leaves, like the air exhales after holding its breath too long. That's what it felt like when Karen's yacht finally disappeared from view. The gulls sounded happier. The water seemed calmer. Even the young couple on slip 22, who'd been silently feuding with Karen's party noise for months, walked down the dock that evening with a spring in their step like someone had lifted a curse. But peace never returns instantly. No, it trickles back slowly, one calm tide at a time. And the 2 months leading up to Karen's departure? Those 2 months were some of the strangest, most oddly satisfying weeks of my entire career running the marina. Because while Karen was preparing to leave, she made it her mission, her dying crusade, to make sure everyone knew how terribly she'd been treated. If her old slip at the end of the main walkway was a throne, slip 12 was her exile. And every day she was determined to voice her agony to anyone within a 10-foot radius. The first week was the loudest. It started on a Tuesday, when she stomped into the office holding her phone like a weapon. She slammed it on the counter and pointed at the screen. "Explain this," she demanded. Pete glanced at the phone. It was a photo of a family unloading beach chairs and coolers near slip 12. "That's a family," he said. "It's a child," she growled, "with sandals. He walked past my boat and touched the rail." Pete blinked. "You do realize this is a public dock, right? It's unsanitary. It's the ocean," he said with a straight face. That same afternoon, she called to complain that a flock of seagulls had perched on the piling next to her yacht. "They leave droppings everywhere," she said, horrified. "They're birds," I reminded her. "They don't follow marina rules." "Well, maybe they should," she snapped, then hung up. By Thursday, she'd filed 3 written complaints about excessive foot traffic, 2 about unacceptable noise from maintenance equipment, and 1 about a rope near her slip that was frayed in a way that was visually displeasing. On Friday, she called to ask if we could power wash the dock near her slip to remove what she described as unprofessional algae. That was the day I genuinely had to put myself on mute so I wouldn't laugh into the phone, but the real entertainment came from watching her interactor attempt to interact with her new neighbors. Slip 11 was occupied by the Wilson family, a group of cheerful, loud, sunburned boaters who treated every Saturday like the 4th of July. They had 3 kids who thought the dock was a racetrack and a golden retriever named Marley, who refused to stay on the boat. Marley loved everyone, except Karen. The first time Marley trotted over to her yacht with a happy bark, tail wagging like a helicopter rotor, Karen shrieked so loud the entire marina froze. "Get that wild animal away from me, Mrs." Wilson scooped up Marley, mortified. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, he's friendly. That creature is a menace," Karen spat. Marley sneezed. Karen gasped as if he'd just fired a weapon. From that moment on, Marley made it his mission to walk past Karen every time he got the chance, tail high, chest puffed, eyes locked on hers like he was daring her to say something again. Even the dog was done with her. The neighbors on slip 13 didn't fare much better. They were retire-a-suite folks who spent evenings sipping iced tea on their deck and listening to soft jazz. One evening, Karen stormed over to them mid-song. "Can you turn that noise down?" Mr. Thompson looked apologetic. "Oh, sorry bothering you?" "Yes," she said sharply. "It's disrupting my night." "Ma'am," he said gently, "it's at conversational volume." "It's jazz," she hissed. "No one listens to jazz voluntarily." Mrs. Thompson raised her eyebrow. "We do." Karen marched back to her yacht like the world personally betrayed her. But the worst moment for her, at least, happened during the second week of slip 12 exile. It was around noon when the maintenance crew rolled their pressure washer cart out of the shed. The machine is loud. Not offensively loud, but loud enough to sound like a jet engine clearing its throat, the kind of noise that tells you something is being cleaned very thoroughly. Karen was sunbathing on the upper deck of her yacht when the pressure washer roared to life right beside her. The scream she let out could have peeled the varnish off a hull. She jumped up, nearly lost her balance, and scrambled down the ladder like a caffeinated squirrel. She stormed toward the maintenance team, hair wild, sunglasses askew. "Turn that off," she yelled. The crew member, a quiet kid named Miguel who had the patience of a saint, removed his ear protection. "I'm sorry, ma'am, what?" "I said turn it off." Miguel looked confused. "Ma'am, This is the scheduled cleaning hour for the walkways. I don't care if it's the scheduled hour of doom, I am trying to relax. One of the other workers, Cal, crossed his arms. We're required to clean this section twice a week. Owner's orders. She spun toward him. Well, tell the owner to stop. Cal nodded solemnly. Sure thing. He'll love that. I heard about the entire scene from 2 customers who were drinking coffee nearby and witnessed every second of it. That same afternoon, Karen appeared at my office again, ready to erupt. That machine nearly gave me a heart attack, she said. Karen, I replied, that machine runs every Wednesday and Saturday. This isn't new. It is to me. No, I corrected gently. You just didn't know that when you lived at the end of the marina. That's why you need to move me back, she snapped. Karen, I said, you still have the option to terminate your lease early if your new placement doesn't meet your standards. I don't want to leave, she snapped. I just want my slip back. Then the answer is still no. She glared at me like she was trying to summon lightning bolts from her eyelashes. After that day, she stopped trying to argue with me. But she never stopped complaining to anyone who would listen, or anyone who wouldn't. I heard she once cornered a fisherman at the fueling dock and lectured him about using a properly aesthetic fuel hose. That man hasn't stopped laughing about it since. But for all the theatrics, something else was happening underneath the chaos, something even Karen didn't see coming. The entire marina had unified against her. People who barely spoke to each other before were bonding over shared suffering. They exchanged sympathetic glances, swapped stories, laughed at her tantrums, even shielded each other from her attempts to recruit them into her unfair treatment narrative. And with every passing week, her grip on attention weakened, her outrage became background noise, her drama stopped being entertaining, her power, the imaginary kind she believed she held, evaporated. By the start of her final month, she was a ghost of her former self. She stopped wearing heels on the dock. She stopped talking to her neighbors. Her yacht's once pristine deck became slightly cluttered, the first evidence of neglect I'd ever seen from her. She looked tired, as if entitlement itself were tiring her out. When her final notice arrived, Pete handed it to me with a quiet smile. She lasted longer than I thought, he said. 2 months of slip 12 is impressive, I agreed. On her last day, she walked into the office one final time. No yelling, no sunglasses, no attitude. Just a woman clutching paperwork tightly in both hands. She placed it on the counter. I'm leaving, she said. I know, I replied. A long silence stretched. Then, I hope you're happy. I met her eyes. Karen, I'm not happy you're leaving. She blinked in surprise. I'm happy the marina will be peaceful again, I said softly. She swallowed hard, then turned and walked out without another word. And just like that, she was gone. The marina breathed again. Families laughed louder. Neighbors chatted more freely. Even the gulls seemed to relax. And slip 35? It was claimed within 24 hours by a retired couple with a little sailboat and hearts as warm as summer water. They brought cookies on their first day. Karen brought lawsuits in her threats. You tell me who deserved the premium slip. Once Karen's yacht was officially gone from the marina, I thought things would immediately snap back into harmony. I imagined that the moment her stern disappeared around the bend of the channel, the entire marina would erupt in celebratory cheers like villagers watching a dragon retreat into the clouds. But that's not how communities heal, not after months of sustained chaos. Instead, the quiet returned slowly, like an old friend approaching cautiously after being scared away for too long. The first sign of change came the very next morning. I walked down the dock with my coffee, doing my usual inspections, checking for loose lines, faulty cleats, anything that needed mending. A few people gave me small nods. They looked lighter, but no one celebrated. Everyone still seemed to tiptoe around the idea that peace could be temporary, like Karen might come roaring back at any second, demanding her kingdom be restored. It wasn't until 2 days later when Mr. Thompson, the jazz-loving retiree on slip 13, stepped out of his boat holding a small handheld speaker. He smiled at me and held it up. Mind if I play something? He asked. I grinned. Go for it. He set the speaker down, pressed play, and smooth saxophone notes drifted across the water, soft, easy, warm, and for the first time in months, no one yelled at him. No one stormed down the dock demanding silence. No one called the office to complain about unauthorized melodies. It was such a simple thing, yet it felt monumental. The next sign came from the Wilson kids. They had been unusually quiet during Karen's final weeks, their parents constantly shushing them, reminding them to avoid slip 12, warning them not to upset the lady on the big boat. But once Karen was gone, the kids reclaimed the dock like it was their playground again. They ran down it barefoot, laughing, chasing each other with plastic nets, pointing at crabs below the planks. Even Marley, the dog, seemed happier, trotting freely without getting scolded for existing. Then came the fishermen. Men who usually kept to themselves began hanging around the fuel station a little longer, swapping stories again, ribbing each other about bait choices, the way they used to before Karen's reign of intimidation. I overheard one of them say, "Feels like the Marina grew 10 feet bigger," and I couldn't help but smile. But the biggest shift came not from the customers but from my staff. I didn't realize how much strain Karen had placed on them until she was gone. Pete, who normally carried the weight of the world with unwavering calm, finally let out a deep breath one afternoon and leaned against the office doorframe. "I didn't realize how much she drained us," he said. "We're running smoother already." Miguel, the maintenance kid she once screamed at during the pressure washer incident, started whistling while he worked again. He hadn't done that in months. Cal, who had mastered the art of ignoring Karen's tantrums, actually took a full lunch break instead of hiding in the equipment shed to avoid her. People underestimate how quickly one person's entitlement can infect an entire environment. It's like mold, you don't notice it at first, but eventually it spreads into every corner until you're forced to tear out walls to get rid of it. The community wasn't just recovering, it was blooming. There was one moment, a week after she left, that truly cemented for me how differently the Marina felt. I was sitting on my boat in Slip 37, enjoying a rare moment of stillness, watching the sun cast streaks of gold across the water. That's when the retired couple from Slip 35, the new residents of Karen's old slip, walked over to me. The wife, a small woman with smiling eyes and silver hair pulled into a braid, held out a plate wrapped in foil. "We baked banana bread," she said. "Wanted to thank you for this amazing spot." Her husband nodded beside her. "We didn't think we'd ever find a slip this perfect. It feels like home." I accepted the plate, warmth rising through me that had nothing to do with the banana bread. "I'm glad you're enjoying it," I said. They lingered a moment, looking out over the marina with peaceful smiles. Finally, the woman added, "We heard a little about the previous tenant." "We're sorry you had to deal with that," I chuckled. "Part of the job," but she shook her head firmly. "No. Protecting a community from someone like that isn't part of the job, it's leadership." That comment hit me harder than I expected. Leadership. It isn't a word you think about while repairing engines at 6 a.m. or hauling bait buckets down a splintering dock. But maybe that's exactly what leadership is: a collection of small decisions to keep a place whole, even when one person threatens to tear it apart. Still, despite the positive shift, a few loose threads remained, specifically Karen-shaped threads. For example, 2 weeks after she left, we received a letter in the Marina mailbox. A very long letter, written on expensive stationery, smelling faintly of lavender and anger. It was from Karen, of course, an official grievance statement accusing us of subpar accommodations, misaligned slip allocation policies, and a culture of hostility and sabotage. She demanded a refund for her last month, which she was not entitled to. She demanded her slip reinstated, which she had forfeited. And she demanded an apology, which was not happening in any universe. Pete read the first 2 paragraphs and started laughing so hard he had to sit down. I drafted a reply that afternoon, short, professional, and laced with legal precision. It explained, in exacting detail, how every action taken was fully compliant with her lease agreement and Marina policy. No emotion, no condescension, just facts, solid, immovable facts. A wall she could punch with all her might and never dent. We never heard from her again. But even after Karen faded into the rearview mirror of Marina history, her presence lingered not in a haunting way, but in a cautionary one. She had left behind something unexpectedly valuable: unity. Slip neighbors who barely knew each other started hanging out. People finally learned each other's names instead of just nodding in passing. The Wilsons hosted a dock-wide barbecue the next Saturday, and almost everyone came. They grilled hot dogs, passed around chips, kids jumped from boat to boat like frogs on lily pads. Someone brought a portable speaker with old rock music. Marley begged for scraps the entire afternoon, and nobody complained, not once. And I walked through that crowd feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Pride. Not the pride of I beat Karen or I proved I own this place, but pride in watching a community rebuild itself. I saw the marina through my uncle's eyes, again humble, imperfect, full of life. A place for people who respect the water, each other, and the rules that keep both safe. One moment from that barbecue stays burned in my memory. Mr. Donnelly, quiet fisherman who usually kept to himself, approached me with 2 plastic cups of lemonade. He handed me one, took a long sip from his own, and then looked out at the marina. "You did good, son," he said quietly. "Just enforcing the lease," I replied. He shook his head. "Not that. You protected this place. Not everyone would." I didn't respond right away. My throat tightened a bit. Uncle Ray had been gone a long time, but hearing those words felt like someone was echoing him. Later that night, when everyone had gone home and the dock lights reflected soft arcs of yellow across the black water, I walked back to Slip 37. I sat on my old fishing boat, breathing in the scent of salt and engine oil. The marina was quiet again, but this time, a warm quiet, a healed quiet, a quiet earned. My boat, the eyesore, rocked gently under my feet, steady, loyal, unchanged, exactly where it belonged. And maybe that was the real lesson Karen never understood. It's not the price of a yacht that gives someone a place in a community. It's respect. Respect for the rules, respect for people, respect for the water. She had none of those things, but the marina did, and that made all the difference. In the weeks that followed, the marina took on a rhythm I hadn't felt since before Karen arrived. A natural ebb and flow of calm mornings, friendly chatter, and the occasional chaos that only real boaters can appreciate. Engines stalled, ropes tangled, kids dropped fishing nets into the water. Normal problems. Problems you can fix with a wrench or a laugh, not with a legal clause or a warning letter. It felt good, it felt real, but peace always has a way of revealing the cracks left behind. One morning, about 3 weeks after Karen's departure, I found Pete sitting alone on the bench near Slip 7. He had a thermos in hand and a pinched look on his face. "What's wrong?" I asked. He pointed to the water below. At first, I didn't see what he was showing me. The morning sunlight danced across the surface, throwing ripples of gold everywhere. But then I noticed a shape, long, dark, bobbing against the dock post. A discarded champagne bottle, Karen's brand. My jaw tightened. Let me guess. She tossed it before leaving? "Found it tangled in the line when I was checking the cleats," he said. "Probably from the night before she moved out." I sighed. "Leave it. I'll get it." But Pete shook his head. "No. It's not the bottle. It's just, I didn't realize how much she changed the atmosphere. Even after she's gone, her shadow's still here." He wasn't wrong. Karen had left, but the marina was still recovering from months of tension. People were almost too polite, now full of apologies that didn't need to be said, hesitating to make noise, checking twice before hosting a gathering, looking over their shoulders as if waiting for someone to scold them. I realized then that Karen hadn't just disrupted the marina, she'd conditioned people to doubt themselves. And it hit me that if we didn't actively rebuild confidence here, the wound she left would stay open. So I made a decision. The next morning, while the fog still clung to the water like a soft blanket, I pulled out the old chalkboard we used for tide updates and wrote something different on it. "Community night this Saturday. All are welcome. Bring food, music, laughter. We're taking our marina back." Then I signed it simply. The owner. By noon, the entire marina was buzzing about it. The Wilson kids asked if they could bring marshmallows. The Thompsons offered to bring their jazz playlist. The fishermen promised a fresh catch. Even the quiet couple at Slip 16 who normally kept to themselves asked if they could set up a grill. Pete raised an eyebrow at me while handing out fuel receipts. "You planning a mutiny?" I grinned. "Nope. A reset." Saturday came, and for the first time in a long time, the marina felt alive. Families set up folding tables along the edge of the dock. Someone brought string lights and hung them between the pilings. Kids ran around with plastic swords made of pool noodles. Marley the dog dipped his paws in the water repeatedly, shaking them out onto anyone standing within a 5-foot radius. And music-real music, the kind meant for human ears, not just Karen's judgment, filled the air. I walked slowly through the gathering, absorbing everything. Conversations mixing with laughter. The smell of grilled corn and salt water. A boy showing off a tiny crab he'd caught. The low rumble of engines cooling down after returning from sunset rides. It was the marina at its best untamed, imperfect, alive. Around 8 o'clock, the sun dipped behind the distant trees, painting the sky with streaks of purple and rose. The lights twinkled over the water like tiny stars. I was standing near Slip 35, Karen's old domain, watching a group of seniors try to coordinate a game of dockside bocce ball when Mr. Donnelly walked up behind me. "You did it," he said. "Did what?" I asked. He gestured around. "This. You brought everyone back." I shrugged. "I didn't do much." He snorted. "You removed the poison. That was enough." I didn't know what to say to that. Compliments still feel strange sometimes. My uncle used to brush them off like flies, but I guess I never learned how. As the night wore on, the crowd thinned, though a few stayed late talking softly under the glow of the dock lights, enjoying the peaceful lapping of the tide. Pete sat with me for a while on the bench, sharing leftover hot dogs. "Honestly," he said between bites, "I wish we'd done this sooner. Karen sucked the joy out of this place." "She didn't take it," I said. "She just buried it for a while." "Still," he said, "I hope we never get another one like her." I gave him a look. "Pete, this is Earth. We're gonna get more Karens." He groaned. "Don't remind me." But that comment stuck with me as I walked back toward my boat later that night. He was right. Another Karen would come someday. Maybe not with a yacht. Maybe not with sunglasses and a superiority complex thick enough to use as a flotation device. But someone would come along with the same sense of ownership over things that didn't belong to them. Someone who would think rules didn't apply. Someone who would test the boundaries of community. The question was, would we be ready next time? Something told me yes, because now the marina wasn't just peaceful, it was united. And that unity wasn't fragile, it was forged through adversity, through laughter shared after chaos, through frustration that turned into solidarity. Through seeing firsthand what happens when one person tries to control a community that doesn't want ruling only respect. The following week, the retired couple from Slip 35 invited me aboard their little sailboat for coffee. As we sat on their deck, the woman gently said, "This place feels safe now, strong. Like the community protects itself." I nodded. "It does. You should be proud," she added softly. I looked out at the water, at my own reflection faintly shimmering between the ripples. "I am," I finally said. For a long time after Karen left, I kept expecting the other shoe to drop, for her to appear again with a lawyer, for her to write reviews online accusing us of discrimination against yacht owners, for her to try to smear me personally, but nothing came, just silence, blissful silence. One afternoon I got curious and looked her up, just a quick search on boating forums. I found one post from her, complaining about poor marina management and unfit slip assignments. Nobody replied. Not a single person. One guy even commented below, "Sounds like the rules were applied fairly. Maybe the problem is you." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. It turns out even the internet wasn't buying what she was selling. But Karen wasn't gone entirely. Not from my memory, not from what she taught me, and not from what she'd inadvertently strengthened. Because here's the truth. Without her chaos, I wouldn't have realized how vulnerable the marina's sense of community had become. Without her arrogance, I wouldn't have recognized how essential clear boundaries are. Without her drama, I wouldn't have seen how deeply people relied on this place as a refuge from the world. Sometimes the people who cause the most trouble are the ones who show you exactly what must be protected. And nothing needs protecting more than peace. As I walked down the dock later that evening, the wind shifted and carried the smell of sea spray toward me. Boats rocked gently, ropes creaked, someone laughed near the fuel station, and a gull perched on the piling next to me, eyeing me with suspicious interest. I looked at Slip 37, my refuge. The eyesore Karen had tried so hard to banish, it sat right where it belonged, and so did I. The marina wasn't perfect. But it didn't need perfection, it needed heart, and it had it beating strong again. All because one Karen tried to break it, and the community refused to let her. About a month after the community night, the marina found its balance, its natural rhythm, almost like the tide had finally come back in after being held hostage too long. But even though the days felt peaceful again, I found myself thinking about Karen more than I expected, not in dread, not in anger, but in reflection. Certain storms leave lessons behind, even after the clouds clear. It was on one of those quiet mornings, the kind where the sun rises slow and soft across the docks, that I decided to take my boat out a little before dawn. Slip 37 was so still you could see the reflection of the moon rippling gently with the motion of the tide. I stepped onto the deck, ran my hand across the rail, and felt something settle inside me, like the Marina and I were breathing in sync again. I started the engine, letting it idle low as I unfastened the mooring lines. The soft rumble of the motor echoed across the water, but instead of disturbing the peace, it added to it. Like the Marina was saying, "This is what we're meant to be." I eased out of the slip, guiding the boat through the familiar channel until the open water stretched out ahead of me, flat and silver like a sheet of glass. I didn't have a destination in mind, just needed the air, the horizon, the calm. Running the Marina was a job I loved, but it was also heavy, and sometimes the only way to carry it was to let the ocean hold the weight for a while. Out there, away from the slips and ropes and chatter, everything felt smaller. Karen felt smaller too. The drama she brought, the chaos she caused, they felt distant, like echoes of a storm that had passed far offshore. I realized then that I wasn't angry at her anymore. I wasn't even annoyed. I was simply done thinking about her as a threat. She was a lesson now, nothing more. On my way back toward the Marina, I saw a familiar boat approaching the Thompsons' sailboat. They waved enthusiastically, even from a distance. I slowed my engine as we passed each other, and Mr. Thompson called across the water, "Beautiful morning! One of the best!" I shouted back. He pointed toward the Marina. "Looks like folks are waking up early today. Must be the weather." I followed his gaze. Sure enough, the docks were already busy. People were stretching lines, checking fuel, wiping dew off their decks. Kids sat cross-legged on the planks, dangling fishing lines into the water. Someone was making coffee near the bait freezer, and the smell drifted out warm and inviting. For the first time in a long time, it felt like home again. As I brought my boat back into Slip 37, a small crowd gathered near the walkway. Nothing big, just little clusters of neighbors chatting as they waited for each other, swapping stories about the weather or the tide. When I docked, the Wilson kids ran over with something cupped carefully in their hands. "Look," the youngest said, opening her palms. Inside was a baby starfish. "Found him over by the rocks," she said proudly. I knelt down beside her. "That's a beautiful find." The older Wilson boy grinned. "We're gonna put him back, don't worry. Mom said we should show you first. She said you like ocean things." I chuckled. She's not wrong. They scampered away, holding the tiny star with both reverence and excitement, and I stood up slowly, taking in the moment. Families playing together, neighbors greeting each other. People moving freely without fear of judgment. The Marina had shifted not just back to what it was, but beyond it. It had become stronger, closer, more connected. Still, something nagged me. Peace is good, community is better, but stability, that requires work. So I decided it was time for something new. Later that afternoon, I invited the entire staff to the office. Pete, Miguel, Cal, and even the part-time college kid who worked weekends. We squeezed in around the conference table that was really just an oversized desk I'd salvaged from a storage unit a decade ago. "We're starting a new program," I said. Pete raised an eyebrow. "What kind?" "A preventative one," I replied. "A community-first set of policies. A way to protect this place from the next Karen who tries to enforce their own personal HOA rules on us." Cal laughed. "You mean like a Karen-proof system?" "In a sense," I said. "Clearer guidelines, more transparency, more group decision-making. And no more letting one person poison the air for 6 months before we act." Miguel frowned thoughtfully. "Are we talking about being stricter?" "Not stricter," I said. "Smarter." Over the next few weeks, with input from the boaters, the staff, and even some of the longtime slip holders, we created what we eventually called the Marina Codian, updated, community-centered policy that emphasized mutual respect, consistent rules, and shared responsibility. It wasn't just a rule book, it was a promise. People responded better than I expected. They appreciated being included. They respected the idea that the Marina was something we all had a hand in maintaining physically, emotionally, socially. And the best part? Not a single person complained. Not one. A month after the new code launched, we held another community night, this one deliberately scheduled to mark the first full season without Karen. I didn't frame it that way publicly, of course, but everyone felt it. It was a quiet celebration, a collective exhale. As the sun set, boats gleamed in shades of orange and gold. People gathered around lanterns and small grills. Someone brought a guitar, someone else brought homemade brownies. Marley the dog stole a hamburger and caused a 10-minute chase down the dock. It was beautiful. And right in the middle of the gathering, as laughter drifted across the water, Pete leaned over to me. "You know," he said, "I think Karen did us a favor." I raised an eyebrow. "That's a bold statement." He nodded. "She showed us what happens when the community sits back, and she showed us what happens when we stand up." I thought about that for a long moment. "Maybe you're right." He nudged me lightly. "Don't let it go to your head." I smiled. Too late. The night stretched on, warm and easy. I sat on the edge of the dock, legs dangling over the water, watching the lights dance across the ripples. People I'd known for years came over to talk, joke, share stories. Newer members introduced themselves. A few thanked me genuinely, quietly for restoring peace here. And as I looked out at Slip 37, my old fishing boat rocking gently in its rightful place, I realized something important. Karen had tried to make me feel small, tried to make this Marina feel small, tried to reshape the world around her image. But what she really did, she revealed how strong the Marina could be, how resilient, how united. Sometimes the loudest storms make room for the clearest skies. That night, I walked back to my boat with a full heart. I sat on the deck, leaned back, and let the soft rocking lull me. The moon reflected across the water, a long, shimmering path leading out into the open sea. And I thought, if peace could be earned, we had earned it. If community could be forged, we had forged it. If leadership could be learned, I had learned it because of her. Not in spite of her, because of her. Funny how life works. The Marina had weathered the storm. We all had. And now, we were stronger for it. Looking back on everything that happened, it almost feels unreal that one entitled woman with a shiny luxury yacht thought she could bend an entire Marina to her will and, instead ended up forging the strongest community this place has ever seen. Karen didn't just test my patience, she taught me what boundaries really mean. She reminded all of us that a community only works when people respect each other. You can't buy belonging. You can't demand peace, kindness, or consideration. Those things are earned, day after day, tide after tide through the way you treat the people around you. If there's one lesson I walked away with, it's this. Sometimes the loudest, most difficult people in your life aren't there to stay. They're there to show you what you will no longer tolerate, what you need to protect, and just how strong your community becomes when it stands together against someone who refuses to respect it. And when that person finally walks away, the silence they leave behind is the sound of freedom. Before you head out, tell me in the comments. Have you ever dealt with a real-life Karen? And where are you watching from? And what time is it there? If you enjoy these moments where the HOA or the Karen finally gets flipped on their head, make sure to hit subscribe, because plenty more wild stories are coming your way.